Welcome back to our special election coverage here at CBNNews.com. I'm Mark Martin. We have our senior editor and political analyst John Wogge here in the CBN News studios and senior reporter Paul Strand in our Washington bureau. Guys, lots of races still hanging in the balance, too close to call. John, let's begin with you. What are we seeing?
Well, we're seeing maybe not a Republican wave, but certainly a Republican high tide. The one seat that Republicans need, they still have a chance in North Carolina, where Tillis, the Republican, is slightly ahead. Virginia is still in there within 3,000 votes in a race no one predicted the Republicans winning. Joni Ernst in Iowa is behind right now, but they have not declared that race. You still have Alaska yet to come with the incumbent Begich and the challenger Sullivan. So, and then in Kansas and Georgia, the Republicans still have to hold on to seats that they now hold. And then there's one more chance that they have of taking away, and that's in Louisiana, which looks like it's headed for a runoff. So the Republicans are tantalizingly close, but they have not gone over the top just yet.
Wow. Well, Paul, you've been watching the key Senate race in North Carolina. What's the latest there?
Yeah, this is amazing. With 90% of the vote in, Tillis finally's jumped ahead, 49% to Hagan's 47%. It's that close. And John was just mentioning Virginia. Listen to this number. Mark Warner, the Democrat, 48.7. Ed Gillespie, 48.6, 0.1%. So it looks like that might be a recount there. So we may not know about Virginia by the end of the evening. And there are just some other crazy tight races. But one thing I wanted to point out is that Pat Roberts is doing better in Kansas than many people predicted. He's got 50% to Independent Ormond's 46%. But that's just with 50% of the vote in.
Yeah, a lot of tight ones, that's for sure. Well, guys, the economy and national security topped the list of voter concerns Tuesday. 72% of those polled admitted they worry about another terrorist attack. 70% said the U.S. economy is in bad shape. On two major health issues of concern, 60% of voters said they're closely following the Ebola scare. 50% of them support the government's handling of Ebola. 44% do not. Many Republican candidates campaigned against Obamacare, and for good reason. 47% of voters polled said the law goes too far. Paul, is this surprising?
No, I don't think so at all. In fact, that seemed from the very start something that Republicans were going to make one of the number one issues. They did in race after race across the country. You saw a lot of Democrats embarrassed to talk about their votes for Obamacare. So I'm not surprised at all. And also with all those numbers in of people's losing their health coverage and all, I don't think this is a surprise at all. John, what about you?
Go ahead. Did you hear what Paul said?
What?
He wanted to know what you thought about the issues as far as the it was actually on the Ebola scare. What'd you think?
Well, I don't think Ebola is as much of an issue as the whole general angst that the country feels as far as the national security concerns and that kind of thing.
Sure.
I think the fact that they rose so high in the exit polls as being issues of concern is not a surprise, but it's significant that happened.
He was also talking about Obamacare too as well.
Yeah, and on the Obamacare thing, I think that the Republicans are going to have their hands full if they do take back the Senate because Democrats are virtually going to dare them to repeal the whole thing, and they know that they've got to have 60 votes to repeal Obamacare, and they don't have those votes even if they win the Senate. So it's going to be a tough go for them, and they may have to first say they intend to repeal Obamacare and then try and piecemeal get rid of some of the least popular elements of the whole health care plan.
And now for more on two key social issues of our time, marijuana legalization and gay marriage. ABC News reports the electorate is almost evenly divided. 2 years ago, voters in Washington and Colorado approved the legalization of marijuana in their states. 49% of voters questioned nationally Tuesday said they favor marijuana legalization. 46% were against. And in a year when numerous federal courts have struck down state marriage laws supporting traditional marriage, 49% of voters polled nationally Tuesday voiced support for gay marriage. 48% were opposed. John, do you see more states following these trends?
Well, I think that the whole thing with the gay marriage laws is being dictated by the courts anyway. So you can have a public referendum like we did several years ago in a number of states, where voters did prefer traditional marriage, and they were just overruled by the courts anyway. I think since then there's been more of a kind of a latitude toward tolerating gay marriage or approving it, and so I think you will see more states go ahead and do that because they think they're going to get more encouragement from the courts, even though we've had a couple stays in recent months.
Sure.
So.
Well, Paul, I know you followed the marriage battle closely. Do you see any action happening in Congress if the House and Senate are under Republican control?
I got to say, I think maybe attempts to pass some sort of constitutional amendment, but I doubt it. I think it's so embedded in the courts right now that that's where it's going to stay. Hey, by the way, I've just heard some breaking news I think the audience would probably want to hear. The networks had already declared that Jeanne Shaheen had taken the Senate race in New Hampshire, but now it's 50-50, and Scott Brown is not conceding. So we may now have New Hampshire back in play, and maybe that's a state we won't know about by the end of the evening. 50-50.
Wow, and Paul and John both, I have breaking news to report as well. Kansas is now being called for Roberts. John, your reaction to that?
Well, what that does, Mark, is that takes pretty much all the Republican seats that were in danger off the table, because Kentucky has already gone for McConnell early in the evening. The Republican in Georgia is well ahead in the effort to hold that seat over Michelle Nunn. And now Kansas being called for Roberts means there are no Republican seats in play, which means the Republicans are at 5. So any of the races still out there on the Democratic side that the Republicans take, that puts Republicans in control of the U.S. Senate. So pretty significant. The call on Kansas is a big one. I actually predicted that Roberts would go down in that race because he just couldn't get his positive numbers up high enough. But the Republicans have a huge ground game in Kansas, and they brought all the big guns of the Republican Party, from conservatives like Ted Cruz to old veterans like Bob Dole, and they all got out for Roberts, and apparently it's done the trick for him.
It paid off. Well, we have more breaking news to report. Associated Press is calling Scott Walker the victor in Wisconsin. Your thoughts on that, John?
Huge. Walker has now won 3 races in a blue state of Wisconsin for governor. He won the governor's race 4 years ago. Then he had a recall election called by the labor unions, who were furious with him. He withstood that, and now he's won re-election. This is a huge victory for Scott Walker personally, and it catapults him to the potential presidential material for 2016, because you're going to look seriously at governors for your chief executive of the United States, which is what the president is. And Scott Walker, having weathered storms more than any other Republican has to at least be considered in the pantheon of potential candidates in 2016.
Yeah, definitely a man of courage. Paul, do you agree with John's assessment of Walker's victory?
I do, and what's interesting is that he won almost 2-1, and John Kasich in Ohio did win 2-1. So maybe John Kasich's going to come back up on people's radar. So Chris Christie, Jeb Bush, you guys are going to have to watch your backs.
Yeah, a lot of contenders. All right, guys, it's been an interesting discussion and a very interesting night.
Absolutely.
Tell you what, the electorate. A lot going on in the election this evening. We're staying on top of it. Of course, you can stay with CBN News all night for updates right here on our news channel. We're going to be live, of course, at 15 minutes after the hour and at 15 minutes before, or watch on demand anytime. Plus, follow us on Facebook or Twitter. Check us out there at hashtag CBN Election 2014. Go to our special election page for our Reporters Live Twitter feed. And we're going to be back at 11:15 with more on these tight races. Stay with us in the meantime online for continuous updates.